OTHs. I was originally on the Healy for 3 years, Station Kauai for 3 years, and then Coast Guard Cutter Alert for 3 years. I've done Pursuit. I dabbled in tactical coxswain before it was taken away at Station Kauai, and in heavy weather coxswain before the 45s became obsolete for it. But that's about it.
All right. So why do you want to be an OIC?
Bosun, I want to be an OIC because from the moment that I saw the bosun mate description on GoCoastGuard.com before I joined and saw that bosun mates were the only rate that had the opportunity to be an OIC, I knew I wanted to do that job. However, since I've joined, I've realized I want to be in command and understand that those two goals are separate based on past experiences that have influenced how I feel about inclusion and professional development. And being in command would give me a better opportunity to have a positive influence on a unit with those two most in mind.
Okay. So what is your command philosophy?
Both of my command philosophy begins with be brave, be a mentor, and take pride in your work.
All right, you want to just talk to us a little bit about each one?
Yes. So being brave goes first into pushing yourself outside of your comfort zone, but it also means a lot to me to stick up for yourself and for your shipmates. Being a mentor for me means not it's becoming, or we're going into a culture shift where prior it used to be, oh, you come to me for sign-offs, you come to me for this, you come to me for that. However, I think we've started to shift towards we're being better mentors to our junior people, and that's what I really want to enforce. And it's not just with qualifications in the Coast Guard. I want people to be able to pursue whatever they want outside of the Coast Guard, and for all of us to be knowledgeable in those programs, to be able to offer that information, and then take pride in your work. Most simply means to me that if you have pride in your work, there's no way that anyone can do a bad job.
All right, thank you. So what would you say is your greatest strength and weakness as a leader?
My greatest strength would be being intrusive and knowing my people, but my greatest weakness definitely is patience.
All right. Did you happen to watch the State of the Coast Guard address today?
I did not.
All right. Do you plan on watching it?
I do. I was in a board and a pre-board.
Okay. Right now, as we sit in the Coast Guard, what would you change?
I would change one of the things that come to mind specifically for women, and I might be biased for that because of this, but I think we're getting better at having equal job opportunities on afloat assets. However, we're not anywhere near where we need to be. And especially with the Master Chief panels that are going to be enforced, women not having as many opportunities to be underway. When we have a panel view of our employee summary put before a board for Master Chief, it might look negatively on a female who doesn't have as much opportunity to be underway versus a male, and just simply because of rack space. So while we're shifting into that gear towards the panels, I do like it. However, we need to continue to equal the playing field for women.
All right. So my last question is, I also want to thank you for submitting your IEPDR and all of your other documents. So I'm sure you knew this would be coming back in, so it was 2011, you received a discipline unrecommended and not, or I'm sorry, unsatisfactory and not recommended, and it appears to be a DUI.
Yes.
Can you tell the board members what happened and what did you learn from this, and how are you going to use this as a leader and as an OIC in the future?
Okay, so the DUI happened in 2011. I was just over my 6-month mark in the Coast Guard. I was a non-rate. I had 2 drinks, was pulled over, and in the course of the field sobriety test, I did the field sobriety test, however, I didn't blow. And at that time, I wasn't aware that it was against policy to refuse a breath test, mainly because I was so junior. And where I'm from in Illinois, I'm just giving you the backstory of where my mind was at. In Illinois, if you refuse a breath test, you just lose your license. It's not an automatic DUI. So when it happened in Washington, that was kind of my in the moment mental process of, all right, I'll just lose my license. But it resulted in an arrest. So, told my immediate command right away. I went through a court process. I volunteered for a victim impact panel, which I think was one of the biggest things that I learned from the experience is how, and we all know truly drinking driving has consequences, but seeing the experience that the victim panel brought and how they lost their loved ones due to it was what most impacted my future decisions on whether or not to drink or drive. Paying fines is, frustrating, but it's not as frustrating as watching someone go through that process of losing somebody. And then, just in general, what I have learned is entirely that situation was completely avoidable. So since then, just having a plan for if I do drink, having a plan to get home, and just setting myself up for success. And then it's been 9 years. In general, I don't drink as much as back then anyway. So that's to sum it up.
Okay, thank you. Just one follow-up question on that. Do you agree with the Coast Guard's policy that when you receive 1 DUI, it's pretty much zero policy or zero tolerance and you're removed from the Coast Guard?
I agree with because when this happened, that wasn't the policy yet, but I agree that you are processed for separation, but then that command has an influence on whether or not to request for retention. I like that check and balance.
All right, sounds good. Thank you very much. I guess we will shift gears to multi-mission ashore. I'm going to kick off with Senior Chief Connor.
Hey, BM1, Senior Chief Connor here. Just to go back on what Bosun was just speaking of, what is the Coast Guard's policy in regards to officers in charge and consuming alcohol?
An officer in charge can consume alcohol as long as it doesn't affect their decision-making ability. And my plan for when I'm an officer in charge, when I am not on leave, I don't plan on having more than 2 drinks at any given sitting or day or moment.
Okay. Do you know where that's referenced?
I do not. I'm going to write that down.
Okay. I've got some more questions for some things you said, but I'll capture those at the end. But right now we're going to shift to multi-mission ashore. Okay. You're going 32 knots. How far will you travel in 3 minutes?
3,200 yards, Senior Chief.
Okay. Sorry. All right, you're traveling 25 knots. How far will you travel in 12 minutes?
$5 miles, Senior Chief.
Okay. Is body armor authorized to be worn over a dry suit?
Yes, it is.
What PPE is required when air temperature is 56 degrees and the water temperature is 61?
Senior Chief, you said water temp 56, air is 61.
Turn those around.
All right. Water temp 60. Can you repeat the question?
Air temperature is 56 degrees. Water temperature is 61. What PPE is required?
It's work uniform.
Say that again?
Work uniform and your
Okay.
PFD.
That's fine. What is the flat 60 box?
A flat 60 box.
Yes.
It's like the 50-50 box, but it has the 60 across.
Okay.
It's usually referencing when you need to, if you don't have Mustangs at the unit.
Okay. How fast does heat leave the body when you are wet, when you're in cold water?
Senior Joe, I would have to look that up, but I would be able to find that in the rescue and survival manual.
Okay. What is a boat forces policy letter?
A Boat Forces policy letter is put out by Boat Forces. It's on the CG portal for Boat Forces, and it's an update that is pending until a manual is updated.
Okay. What is 33 CFR 6?
That is our authority, and to conduct PWICs is one of the things we can do under that authority, and Ms. Rose.
Okay. What is a LAA?
A limited access area.
Can you name them?
Yes. We have MVZP, security zone, safety zone, and restricted waterways.
Okay. What gives us our authority and jurisdiction?
Our authority and jurisdiction comes from 14 USC 522, which is our general law enforcement authority. And then
That's fine. What is an LA 51?
an LA 51 is the flashbang for warning shots out of the shotgun.
What is level 2 tactics for a non-compliant vessel?
Step 2?
Yes.
Step 2 is warn.
What is considered high speed?
High speed, Senior Chief, is anything over 30 knots.
What precautions must be taken during high speed operations?
Precautions taken for high speed operations are we need to be restrained, wearing proper PPE, but also the boat is more likely to hook a chine. So just being aware that at a faster speed, you have a higher risk of injury.
Okay. What is the AIS default setting for a multi-mission unit?
It is insecure.
Okay. When could you change the setting into what?
It can be changed to in the clear, but we normally don't want to just be in the clear.
Okay. What is a scenario wherein you would want to be in the clear?
If we can't get into contact with who we need to contact, and it's usually because the codes aren't entered right.
Okay. What about navigation reasons? Anything come to mind?
If we have an emergency pon, or we need to make vessel arrangements.
Okay. All right. You get a call from the duty coxswain. They are launching on the 45 for a 96-foot trawler with 5 persons on board, 65 nautical miles offshore, taking on water. What are your thoughts?
All right, so we have 5 person on board, 96-foot trawler, 65 nautical miles offshore,
Yes.
and we have a 45.
Yes.
Okay. What is the weather, Senior Chief?
Light and variable. Winds about 10 knots. Seas 1 to 2 feet.
Okay. And they're taking on water?
They are.
Okay. Does anyone have a medical concern?
No.
Okay. So they're in distress. They're taking on water. They're 65 miles out. We'll launch. It's going to take at least about an hour to get there with the 45. And being a trawler in that large, we'll need to evaluate how hard it may be pulling alongside and getting the people off. But we can have Hilo also be coming on scene, which could assist and at least be there. Usually they're there first if they're able to launch.
Is your crew authorized to launch for this case?
Yes.
Okay. How long can a restricted waiver last, and who authorizes it?
Restricted waiver can last 30 days, and it's authorized through small boat product line. However, the operation commander is who authorizes the use of the asset.
Okay, where is it tracked?
It's tracked in Almas.
Okay. All right, BM3 tells you while mooring the 45, they are pushed up and rubbed the buoy tender tied up at the pier. Fenders were properly in place, but the taffrail still rubbed the cutter's hull, causing no damage to the cutter and only a little scuff mark on the rail. Does this constitute a mishap?
Okay, so the BM3 in the boat rubbed against a buoy tender, and the taffrail on the boat made a scuff mark on the buoy tender.
No, made a scuff mark on the 45's taffrail. It looks like sandpaper just rubbed it.
And is that a mishap?
That's what I'm asking you.
No.
Okay. What is the crew competency requirements to conduct MLE? What qualifications must the crew have on board, and how many members are required?
On a boat,
Yes.
you need at least a BO and a BTM, and then the other two, you need 4 people total, with a BO and a BTM being one of them.
Okay, can the coxswain be the BO?
No.
Okay. What is the requirements for a level 1 PWCS unit? I'm sorry, for a non-level 1 PWCS unit to get underway?
To do a MISRO?
Yes.
Senior chief, that they need a 4-person crew with a BO, BTM, and at least 1 long gun. But they'll both have PDWs as well.
Okay. What phase of SAR is an unmanned adrift?
It's I wouldn't call it a phase of SAR. Well,
If you're launching for an unmanned adrift.
apprehension.
Right.
Alert, sorry.
Okay. What is the Coast Guard salvage policy?
The Coast Guard salvage policy is when another asset is not on scene, the Coast Guard may conduct salvage with the officer in charge's authorization, to include setting anchors, possibly evacuating, helping them determine seaworthiness, and waiting for the next tide.
Okay. What is the track spacing for a 20-foot vessel with 0.3 POB and 14-knot winds and 4-foot seas? Last question.
It's a mile.
20-foot vessel, 3 persons on board, 14-knot winds, 4-foot seas.
A half a mile, sorry.
Okay, Bosun, I'm done.
All right, thank you, Senior Chief. All right, we're going to switch to multi-mission to float for Bosun Lawler.
Good evening, Beam One. How you doing?
Good evening, Bosun.
You got any water or something to drink there? Do you need to take a drink or anything? You're okay?
I'm okay, Bosun.
All right, good. So we're going to cover the float stuff, okay? So let's get into some nav rules. Yeah. In your own words, can you describe safe speed, and what do you find important while determining safe speed?
Bosun, safe speed is using using your speed for the prevailing circumstances to include vessel density or traffic density, visibility, draft, background lighting, weather, and maneuverability. And then also to include the use of your radar, including the characteristics and limitations of your radar, constraints by your radar, range, scale use, your weather, clutter on your radar, and then number of objects that could clutter your radar, objects not easily seen on radar, and using your radar's range scale to determine visibility.
Okay. What's Rule 7?
Rule 7 is risk of collision.
Okay, so what does this rule require of all mariners?
All mariners must use all available means to avoid risk of collision.
Okay, so tell me what CBDR is.
CBDR, Bosun, is constant bearing decreasing range. Also, a vessel can be determined to have a risk of collision if the vessel is very large, towing, and or in close proximity. I can't say that word. It's close in range.
Gotcha. So if you determine there's a constant bearing, what shall you do?
You shall take action to avoid collision.
Okay. What's the most privileged vessel according to the NAV rules?
The most privileged vessel is not under command.
If we're talking about head-on situation, what does the rule say that they do not prefer? According to the rules in a head-on situation, what does it shy away from? What does it not want us to do?
Turn to port.
So what is Rule 17?
Rule 17, Bosun, is action by stand on vessel.
Okay. Let's talk about Rule 19. First
Rule
off,
19.
What is Rule 19?
Rule 19 is conduct of vessels in restricted visibility.
Okay, can you explain that?
Yes.
What does that mean?
Vessels in restricted visibility shall use a speed for the prevailing circumstances. When determining if a close quarters situation is developing, a vessel shall, they detect a vessel on their radar, shall not turn to port for a vessel forward of their beam, and shall not turn to starboard for a vessel back to their beam or beam. And when only detecting a vessel by hearing, they shall take all the way off, slacken speed, and navigate with extreme caution until either they determine risk of collision doesn't exist or they make another action, basically.
Okay. Navigation standards. Can you tell me what the new differences are in the Commandant's navigation standards?
I can. My alarm's going to go off. I'm going to secure it real quick. One second.
Okay.
In the new navigation standards, some of the bigger changes where we switched to automatic plotting and manual plotting. They implemented the use of Siemens eye and gave the definition for it. We're no longer allowed to print our own charts. And those are the three big ones. And then they just better organized what goes in our nav standards for cutters and boats, and it's a better organized manual.
Okay, so speaking of cutters, what needs to be in your navigation standards? Just name some few.
My navigation standards are going to include our zones and areas, fixed interval, voyage planning, our ready charts, the rest of the charts that we need, and the standard helm commands, line handling commands, anchoring checklist.
Okay. So what about your newly reported officer in charge? How long do you have to sign and promulgate your navigation standards?
Bosun, we have 90 days.
All right. Hey, Eric, can you pull up that Mo board for me? There's going to
Yeah,
be a
I'll
Mo
bring
board here shortly.
Yeah, I'll bring it right up. Oh, too many things up.
Nice.
That one?
Yeah, that's fine.
All right.
So, hey, BM1, tell me which vessel you're most concerned with.
Charlie.
Is there any others?
Echo will be a crossing situation eventually.
Okay, so tell me why you selected Charlie as your number one issue.
And this is in relative motion, right?
It is.
Okay, because Charlie is pointed directly at us, which means in relative motion we will be colliding.
Okay. Thanks, Eric. All right, so we're going to talk about some general afloat questions and then get into some engineering, okay?
Roger.
So tell me, what would be on your getting underway checklist?
There are sample getting underway checklists in the Commandant's navigation standards, so I would follow that. But things you are looking for the best thing that I like is the nav brief and the expectations of when that's completed, because a lot of the things that are in the nav brief will take care of what's going on in the checklist. But when you're lighting off the plant, when you are checking your gyro error, when we're looking over the charts, what aids we're going to see in the chart and during the restricted waterway departure entering, and getting underway checklist. You know, your basic logistic stuff, your trash, mail, your sewage, water.
Okay, so tell me, while you're sailing in restricted waters, how would you set up your engineering plant?
Full plant, Bosun.
All right, so is there something that would govern that understanding?
Yes.
What would that be?
I would have that in the navigation standards.
What, is there something else?
It's also in the Commandant's navigation standards and in the NEM.
Okay. What is the RMD?
The restriction and maneuvering doctrine is a agreement between myself and the EO on what can be secured during a restricted waters, usually transit. Or there's other times you would use it as well.
Okay. So you recently assumed command on an 87-footer. You're preparing for your first underway trip. What drills would you like to see prior to setting sail?
Is this during my relief week, Bosun?
No, you've already relieved.
Okay.
You're just preparing for your first underway trip.
Okay. I would have wanted to run all the drills during my relief week prior to going.
It was a relief for cause, so too bad.
Followed up. Okay.
Yep, you're in.
So all of our main space fire doctrine drills I would like to see the initial actions for, and our just basic navigation drills to see where the bridge team is at, and getting the cutter boat in and out. I would like to see, because I personally haven't been on an 87, and I would like to see how the current crew does that. And are we going anywhere big, or is this strictly for familiarization?
Shakedown cruise.
Okay, just pretty much every drill.
All right. So now you're underway. Same situation. You ran pre-drills. Now you're underway. What underway drills would you like to see executed while cutting through the water? First trip.
Abandoned ship to make sure everyone knows where they're going. Man overboard to see how the crew picks a person up out of the water.
I'm going to take 5 more minutes, guys, so I can cover the engineering stuff and offer a scenario, if that's all right.
And I would like some feedback on that because that's a good question. If I can pause there.
We'll get to it.
Okay.
We'll get to it after the board.
Okay.
All right. What is a CCOL?
Posing the CCOL is the compartment checkoff list. It has all of our DC equipment and hatches and doorways, so that if someone were in there and they needed to find something or couldn't find a way out, they'd be able to find whatever they need on the checklist.
All right. So again, you're on an 87. You're 60 miles offshore. You guys are doing fishery boardings.
Mm-hmm.
Your BO calls back, says they got a number of violations,
Mm-hmm.
recommend termination.
Okay.
You called OPCON, try to let them know the situation. The only issue is you cannot get hold of them. How are you going to handle this situation?
I will call another department and sector and see if they can find.
You're 60
OPCON?
miles out.
Okay.
Nobody's picking up on the radio. You got neg-res on comms. But you got a boarding team over on a fishing boat. Serious safety issues. They want to terminate. How do you handle it?
I would still terminate and put them into tow and bring them in, but in the meantime, try to fix their comms issues and then let sector and OPCON know as whenever we get a hold of them of what our decision was.
Can you terminate?
For a commercial boat, we're not supposed to, but if they have serious safety violations, then I would still terminate.
Okay.
Or at least tow them in. We can tow them in as a safety hazard.
All right. So let's talk about AMUS.
Okay.
What are the different boat statuses within AMUS?
We have fully mission capable, partially mission capable, not mission capable, not mission capable, supply, not mission capable, NMCM, maintenance, and not mission capable depot.
Who can authorize boat statuses?
The boat statuses are authorized through EO, and then depending on the unit, they can delegate it down to EPO.
Okay. How would you apply for an upgrade to a shoreside facility?
I don't know what that would mean.
So you want to do some maintenance on your boathouse because the roof is falling down,
Oh, okay.
or it's being deteriorated. So you want to redo the boathouse.
Okay.
How would you go about doing that?
Okay, so we have SAMs, and then we have a shoreside maintenance request you can put in. It goes through civil engineering, and if it, anything between $5,000 and $30,000, and then they will come. POP board will eventually convene, and they'll decide what civil engineering projects they want to fund.
So what is this POP board you mentioned?
Its function is to delegate self-help funds, but the acronym is leaving me right now.
Okay. What are 45 funds?
45 funds, BOSUN, are naval engineering funds.
And 43?
43 BOSUN is civil engineering funds.
How do you get assistance on your computer network?
We would contact the SFO, and the ITs would assist.
Just like that? Just contact them?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I think I'm going to yield to the next. Thank you, BM1.
Thank you, BOSUN.
All right, thank you, Bosun. We will shift now to Aton, Senior Chief Hines.
Okay, once I figure out the technology here. Thank you, Bosun. All right, good evening, BM1. I'm going to jump into some general ATON here. At a small boat station, what are your responsibilities concerning ATON?
Our responsibilities, Senior Chief, are to make sure aides are watching properly. We'll conduct patrols to make sure the aides are still good in there. And then if we have a discrepancy, then we would pass that to a neighboring ATON unit and sector for a local notice to mariners update.
How would you make that notification?
We would call prevention or the ATON unit directly.
Okay. Is there any other method?
We would put out a message with OIX.
All right. What does IALA stand for? Okay. It's broken into two parts. Do you know which region we're located?
We are in Region B, Bosun, or Senior Chief.
Okay, and what's the easiest way to identify that?
Senior Chief, the North and South America, and I believe Japan are B, and the rest is A.
Okay, and what's the primary difference? How would you know you're in Bravo when you're in the U.S.?
The buoys are opposite. So for us, it's red right returning, and for the other places, it's green right returning.
Okay. What does a safe water buoy look like?
Bosun, it is white and red with
All right.
2 red balls on top.
Okay. What's a flash characteristic?
It's Morse Alpha.
All right. What does ICW stand for?
ICW is the Intercoastal Waterway, and they have the yellow squares on the buoys
Okay. Just squares?
and triangles.
Where does it run?
It runs between 2 large rivers, and I've never been on that mission, but it runs laterally.
Do you know from where to where? Which port to port?
I do not.
Okay. All right. What resource would you utilize to identify ATON lights that are extinguished, buoys that are off station, bridge closures, dredge operations, and/or marine events?
The local notice to mariners, Bosun.
Okay. What color is a Coast Guard anchor buoy?
On a chart,
No, in real life, seeing it floating in the water.
Bosun, I do not know that, but I would be able to find that information in a light list.
Okay. So what equipment should an aids to navigation team member be wearing if they are being shuttled to climb an aid from your small boat?
Bosun, they would need to be wearing a harness and a helmet of some, or a helmet, or a, and I would assume other PPE such as goggles and gloves if they need it, and steel toe boots and a PFD.
Okay. What about your crew on the small boat? What is their concern?
I would immediately think of just debris falling on them, so also helmets and safety gear, goggles.
Okay. Do you know what the fall zone is or how wide the fall zone is?
I do not.
Okay, I'm going to shift gears. Let's jump over to some supply-related questions. Can you please name for me as many as you can the sources of supply available for purchasing?
82 is galley, 30 funds is maintenance and operation, 45 is naval engineering, 43 is civil engineering.
Okay, but how about the sources of supply?
Like GSA.
Okay, that would be one.
GSA, ability 1, your stock system, putting in surf sheets, mill strip, and then your regular commercial vending. If something wasn't available through GSA or the stock system, then using a commercial vendor.
Okay. What is a ratification used for?
A ratification is used for when a PR wasn't fully approved, but a purchase was made anyway. So a ratification is a process that the FNS then has to go through to fix that.
And who approves those?
I can't remember the name, Bosun.
Okay. Can you explain just a little bit about the BPR process?
Yes. So the unit will put in a PR. The XBO is normally the acting funds manager. They'll have a ledger for the PRs, and then once they approve it, it goes to, for us, it's an SK1 in our district, and then she disperses the PR to her purchase card holders, who then go over the PR and either approve or reject it as well. If they reject it, then it goes back to the unit. They have to fix it. If they approve it, then it gets purchased pretty much immediately within 10 days if it's a priority 3, and it then comes to the unit.
Can you buy water with 30 funds?
You
Bottled
can, if it's on the weekly menu, it is 1 serving size and it is a liter or less.
Okay. How often is a galley inventory conducted?
The galley inventory, Bosun, is conducted monthly and is signed by the OIC.
What happens if you are more than 10% off on your inventory?
Bosun, if you are more than 10% off on your inventory, you have to have a memo, and if it's a deficit, then you need a plan to fix that deficit for the next month.
Okay. Who does that memo go to?
I want to say FSAT, but I'm not sure if that's right.
Your MK2 comes to you and says that they've noticed the cook 3 different days in a row now. Your CS has been giving food after the workday to your newest non-rate at the unit, and the non-rate has been taking the food home. How would you handle this? What would be your concerns, and how would you handle it?
My concern is that they're taking food home that isn't for everyone, basically. So I wouldn't want to, I would sit them down. I don't want a member taking food home, regardless if they're paying for that meal or not. So I would let them know, listen, if we have food left over, it's not meant to be taken home. We need to throw it away, and give them that counseling and document it, and then move on.
Who are you counseling?
The member and the cook.
Okay. Do you have any other concerns? Any other thoughts that would come to mind during this?
I would ask them if they have anything going on at home. So if they have money issues, or if there's anything else I can do to help them, but just that the act of taking food home from the cutter isn't the right way to handle that, and then try to find out what is going on and then a different way to help them.
Okay. All right. So if you found out that the member was going through a hardship, this is a married non-rate with a new child, and they are going through a financial hardship, would you still consider the counseling?
I can always have a written counseling for the unit, but I would still have the counseling, but still offer them the service of helping them in another way. I need to counsel it either way.
Okay. Finish up with a couple education. Are you, as the officer in charge, are you automatically designated as the unit's ESO?
No, Bosun, it's designated through OPCON, and you have to be an E7 and above.
Okay. What is tuition assistance?
Tuition assistance is a benefit for active duty and recently reserve members are authorized as well. it's $22.50 a year, and which usually amounts to 3 semester classes per year, and then the breakdown for quarter classes is a little bit different, but it's $250 per credit hour, and the member needs to have a positive progression towards quals, my authorization, and after 6 semester hours, they need a degree plan entered into the CG Institute, along with some other stipulations.
Very good. Thank you, BM1. I appreciate it. Thank you, Bosun.
All right, thank you. So we will, last one we have on the block here is CMC work life.
All right, BM1, you ready?
Yes, Senior Chief.
All right. Thanks, sir. All right, so first scenario. You get a call, it's 2 o'clock in the morning. It's from your local police officer, is also a reservist, has your XPO there on the side of the road. They blew a .09. And the reserve is asking, do you want us to take him in, or you just want us to bring him down to the station? You can handle him. How are you going to handle that situation?
I would ask the reservists to use their judgment on what, regardless if it was another Coast Guard member or not. So if in their judgment they were too intoxicated to drive, then arrest them, or if in their judgment they are able to safely drive the vehicle, then let them go. But I don't want to influence the reservist decision.
Okay, let's say that reserve police officer arrested your XPO. What's your next steps?
My next step would be to notify my chain of command, my CMC, legal, and then obviously make sure the XPO is okay. See if they need help with arrangements on leaving, and then opening up an administrative investigation and moving on forward from there.
Yeah, do you know what a CIT is?
A
CIT?
CIT,
Sit.
yes. The command, it's, when the command is basically on a conference call to discuss the situation.
Okay, do you know who's on that call?
It would normally be the OIC, the command chief, legal, the response chief, or my chain of command, and maybe a CDAR for an alcohol incident, but it's different for different incidents.
Okay, your XPO is a member of the command, right? It's kind of held to a higher standard. Would you handle that differently?
Not for a DUI, no.
Okay, would you relieve them or request them to be relieved?
No, not immediately. I would take time to process what I would need to do, but I would seek counsel from my chain and then the CMC before I made a decision, but my immediately thought isn't to relieve them.
Okay, do you know who can make that decision?
The OPCON. So for us, it's our response chief.
Yeah. Walk me through your INDOC program.
My INDOC program would include, is this for a cutter or a station?
Does it matter?
For a cutter, you just additionally need your EBD and egress stuff, but your INDOC program will outline different people that are at the unit that are responsible for different things. It includes the check-in sheet, so who they're going to see, and a couple of the most important things to me would be getting their IDP done before I get to see them so that they can get an idea of what the Coast Guard has to offer and then their goals, the SAPR program, the understanding of what happened, who you need to call if you have a emergency leave, or if you have a family emergency, or you have a CGMA situation, or if a member gets arrested, so having that outlined for the XPO, and then just the other basic check-in stuff for RNS, LEPO, WEPO, ops.
Have you ever seen that video, the first 72 hours that was made in like 1974?
I did.
Okay. All right. Well, how'd you think of that video?
That is not conducive to the culture of inclusion.
Okay. Can you explain the equal opportunity policy?
Yes, the equal opportunity policy is regardless of a protected status to treat every member the same. But also we're not without bullying, hazing, harassment, or discrimination.
Okay. Do you know what the special emphasis programs are?
Special emphasis
Yes.
I've heard of the Richard Etheridge program is to help get African Americans in the BOSAMate program, but that's the only one I've heard of, if that's what that is.
Okay. Look that one up a little bit. We'll talk about it.
Okay.
What are the 3 MARSEC levels?
MARSEC level 1 is our baseline security posture. MARSEC level 2 is a heightened security posture, and MARSEC level 3 would be for an immediate threat or an immediate, like we got intelligence that a situation is developing.
Okay. What are the 5 steps of the risk management process?
The 5 steps for the risk management process are identify hazards, assess hazards, develop controls, evaluate. I gotta dig into that more.
Okay. What are the duties that you cannot delegate?
We cannot delegate the safety, welfare, and efficiency of the crew. We can't delegate the initial signing authority for qualifications. And that's what jumps out to me right now.
Okay. Do you know where you can find that information?
We have it in Coast Guard Regs Chapter 4, but we also have, each manual has OIC roles and responsibilities.
Okay. We talked about ESO a little bit earlier. Talked about 2250 for funds. Is there any other program out there to where a member can get their certificate?
We have the SEG grant, where tuition assistance covers tuition. The SEG grant covers fees for courses. It has similar rules as TA. And then we have the voluntary credentialing program, which goes along with CG Cool. CG Cool is a website for all the services. They each have their own. And basically, the easiest way to start off is to go into what rating you are and then what credentials are offered. And from there, the ESO is the best person to help you navigate to get reimbursed. But you need to identify what you're going to do, request the reimbursement, and then do the program prior to.
Yeah, cool.
Yep.
All right, let's do a scenario. So you have a young pastor, Holmes, who is away from their home for the first time. Her boyfriend back home called and broke up with her. She tells you that she is okay. Your B1 reports that Pastor Holmes is spending a lot of spare time alone by herself. She used to laugh and joke and be bubbly with others, but no longer appears to be having any fun. She used to be obsessed with death and morbid subjects. You find her crying and having meltdowns at work. What do you do?
I would pull her aside. I will, behind closed doors without other people, and just start off generally, how are you doing? I've heard that you've gone through a relationship situation, and see if she is open to talking. Eventually, based on what was reported to me, it sounds like she may be suicidal. So asking her if she is suicidal, and then also providing services. The chaplain is a resource, family advocacy is a resource, CISM and the CMC are all good resources for that. But we would want, usually a person that is suicidal will normally tell you that they are, but if they aren't, we have also CG support to where they could get counseling.
Okay. Let's say that pay officer is a boarding officer at your unit. Is that going to affect her carrying a gun for you?
I would want to have her be evaluated first.
Okay, she's now a boarding officer in the current duty section. What are you going to do?
Is she the only one?
She's one of two.
I will have her be evaluated, let her know that it is a concern, and if she's evaluated and she's fine, then that's fine, but I don't want to jump to a conclusion.
So you're allowed to keep carrying?
If she's evaluated and she is said to be okay, then I would.
Okay. All right, let's do a different scenario. So you have line 1 and his wife have a 4-year-old child who has mild asthma and an older 10-year-old who has ear infections from 1 to 5 years old. In school, the older child sits in front of the classroom and needs extra help daily to make sure they get through. Line 1 has enrolled the younger child in special needs program. Do you think the older child should be in as well?
A special needs category is education. If the child if the child is struggling in that aspect, then I would need to seek more information, but we could see if they would apply for the education category and then tell the member that if they qualify for that category, then they need to enroll the dependent for at least 6 months, but it's not a permanent assignment, I guess.
Okay, who are you going to get help from for that?
The family resource specialist.
Okay, good. All right, do you know what article gives you UCMJ authority?
Article 15 and the Coast Guard regs.
Okay, what is your max punishment?
The max punishment, senior chief for an OIC, is 14 days restricted, 14 days extra duty, and 3 days of forfeiture of pay.
Okay, do you know what a military protective order is?
I do. It is a order for one person to have no contact and nothing from another person, in other words. And then we would use our legal office to help us get the order.
Who's the final authority on that?
I need to look that up.
Okay. So you just took over your jobs, the first quarters, and how are you going to introduce yourself to the crew?
I would introduce myself as, hello, my name is BM1 Adeline Drescher. It's a pleasure to be reporting, and I see that you take really good care of the station, and I am excited to see what we are going to accomplish in the future.
Okay. What is your greatest fear as an OIC?
The first thing that jumps to mind is just failure, but I don't have any shyness in asking for help, so I would mitigate that by making sure I reach out to my peers if I am in a situation where I need help with a decision or anything like that.
Okay. All right, Bosun, that's my time.
All right, thanks, Senior. All right, BM1, we've got some time here. We're a little bit ahead of schedule. I'm going to follow back around the room. I think we have some follow-on questions, so I'm going to hand it over to Senior Chief Connor.
BM1, when you started off this evening, you mentioned mentorship and how you like how the Coast Guard's changed over the years, over your career. Do you think that has more to do with the direction the Coast Guard is going, or more so with the applicants, the junior members that are coming up into the service today? You
I
think we're doing it because we want to, or you think we're doing it because we have to?
I think it's both of those, Senior Chief. I think that over time we are weeding out bad leaders that don't support mentorship in positive ways, but also by doing that, we are also reinforcing other people to be good leaders and mentors and showing that we're holding others accountable. But
Okay.
that's a fluid.
What about a scenario at your unit where you've got a junior member, let's say a BM3, who's coming up on their Cox and Qual deadline? Your ops comes to you in the XPO and says, I checked the members' PQS. They're 1/3 of the way done, and their deadline's in a week. Okay, how are you going to handle that?
I would be involved in the training program from the beginning, so I hopefully would have noticed if someone needed help and that they weren't further along in their progression. However, I would be asking, is this a training issue or is this a willingness issue? And
Well, the members telling you that they keep going to BM2s and doing the training, and then afterwards BM2 just goes on about their day. They don't pull the member aside with their PQS.
a good way to check that is to check ALMIS, so see how often the member was underway and whether or not they were underway with the BM2s, and then approach the BM2s and ask them, open-endedly, how is the training going on with this member? How often are you getting underway? There's not every personality is an alpha personality where they're going to be jumping on other people to get help. And that's when I talk about the mentorship part of it, that's where I like to see the change, where we're not hand holding to get people's quals done, but we are being, we're approaching them. Hey, what can I help you with? Can I get you underway? What would you like to work on today? That type of intrusive mentorship. As far as the member being 1/3 of the way, I also want to know if they've also been working on other quals at the same time. Some units have multiple quals at the same time, and if they were extremely successful in one qual and that took time away from their Cox and Qual, and that could be a reason, and we can talk about extending their deadline, but we would come up with a plan to get that member progress and getting qualified. But it
Okay.
would include me working with the member.
Okay. All right. I appreciate the answer.
Thank you.
Hey, Bose, how long can you extend a deadline for a team on that situation? Can you do it for another 6 months, or how long would you do it for?
You can extend a deadline. A deadline isn't in policy for anyone but in command, but I would set goals for that person. I'm not going to extend it a year, but I'm going to, for a BM3 on their first Cox and Qual, I would maybe give them another 30 days and then have a very structured training plan for them. But I guess that would be the beginning.
There's something out there to where somebody has a deficiency in their job that we can do.
Yeah, so if it turns into a willingness or a ability issue, then there's other avenues. So if it's not a training problem, it's the member, we can start off, one, it all should have been outlined in their INDOC program and their training memo and their qualification deadline that if there wasn't progress to completing the qual, they can go on training duty status. So start off with that, move on to port and report, and then if they continue not to have any progress, look at performance probation or unsuitability, which needs to be a minimum of 6 months for each of those.
All right. Why do you deserve a waiver?
Do I deserve a waiver?
Yeah, you say you got to get a waiver to take this board, right?
Yes.
Why do you deserve it?
I That's a good question.
No, that's why I asked it.
I'm an ambitious person, so I'm going for it to go for it. And I've had ups and downs in my career, however I've overcame all of them, and this is something that I'm just want. And the last, I would say, 5 years, I've made nothing but positive progress in my career, and I'm hoping for that opportunity, but I couldn't say I deserve it over somebody else, if that makes sense. Like
All right, we are gonna work on that answer
okay.
after this.
Okay.
All right, because that will come up.
Okay.
And that answer will tank your board.
Okay.
Yeah, I would ask to end it right there.
Okay.
But you know me, we worked together a little bit before. We will help you out with that.
Okay. Thank you.
Bringing up the 28 leadership competencies might be a good thing right there. That's one thing to bring up, because you get so your knowledge into mentorship because you know the 28 leadership competencies, right? All right, boys, and I'll stop.
All right, I know Chad, you have a leadership scenario.
Hey, BM1.
Hi, Bosun.
All right, so here's a scenario for you. So there's a spouse of one of your members who's working at a local strip club, and it's rumored that she has been soliciting and advertising on social media to many of the members at your unit. Now, there seems to be a lot of members frequenting this club ever since this spouse has started working there. Do you have an issue with this?
If it's causing a distraction at work and changing the environment of the professionalism of being at work, then yes. So if it's causing a disruption at work, then I will order them to stop going to the strip club and keep the conversations between them and that member's spouse professional.
Can you just order the whole unit not to go somewhere? Can you ban a public location while your members are on their off time?
Yes.
By what authority?
I need to read into that.
Okay. So tell me, what would be some issues that you would be concerned with? You're very quick about, we're banning this place. What are your concerns?
So it's not, I don't have concerns with them going there and being there as normal patrons, but if they're having an unprofessional relationship with this member's spouse, then I have concerns for that member whose spouse it is, that they have a
So how would you handle that? Okay, yeah, that's good. So you would have a concern with that member's spouse. I'm sorry. You'd be concerned with that member at your unit.
Mm-hmm.
So you go talk to her. She's working. She's an MK2 at your unit. What would you say to her?
I would ask her if she has a problem with the other members talking, if they are, and two, if it's making her uncomfortable that they are being unprofessional with the fact that her spouse is working at a strip club.
Well, she replies to you that's not that she has an issue with her spouse working at a strip club. Mm-hmm. She's done that before. She does have a problem with her spouse soliciting members at the unit. So it's not so much about the employment, it's about how her spouse is soliciting patrons.
Does this go beyond them just going there?
Just frequenting?
Yes.
As far as you know, the information is they've been going to this club and they've been being entertained at a strip club by one of your members' spouses.
If it's not causing a disruption at work and there's no like unprofessional acts between the members and the person's spouse, then I would ask if the member would be interested in a work life program where they could get counseling together. But if at first I thought it was the members causing a problem with the spouse, not the spouse soliciting from the members.
You haven't got any reports that it's manifested into anything like that. It's just a matter of members are frequenting this club. There's one of your members' spouse that's working at the club, and the spouse has been soliciting patrons at your unit via social media.
Oh, if it's on social media and the members are responding, then I would advise the member whose spouse it is that we need to not put on social media things that would discredit the Coast Guard, and that includes things with our spouse. So the member needs to tell the spouse to not solicit the Coast Guard members.
Can we control a member's spouse?
We can when it comes to stuff that affects our appearance, we can tell the member to tell the spouse not to stop doing it.
And you think that's going to work itself out? What are the chief issues here? What are you most concerned with? Your action was sound. I'm just really wanting to understand your thought process. What are you most concerned with?
I'm most concerned with how comfortable the member is at the unit and if it's causing a disruption in the workplace that's affecting her.
And do you think there's a high probability that could happen?
Yes.
Okay. So the thought process is the projection 6 months from now, what the ramifications or the high probability the ramifications could be, right?
Yes.
Okay. And can you ban the unit from going to from a location? You said you would do it, but can you?
We've been banned from places at port calls, so I would say yes.
Were they in a foreign country?
Yes.
We're in the United States. We're in
Okay.
Michigan City.
Okay.
Can you do that in Michigan City?
I will look into that.
Okay. Since you don't know that piece, would be the first phone call that you would offer or you would dial up?
I would need to call legal.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Bosun.
All right, BM1, before we let you go here, we'll have you log off and then we're going to deliberate and then I'll text you to come back in.
Okay.
But just want to quick ask, one thing that I didn't hear that I would like to ask you, how are you going to foster a positive command climate at your unit? And what is a positive command climate in your eyes?
A command climate in general is a reflection of the crew's perception of the command. So I would live to the values that I have that would foster a command climate, which would include inclusion, It would include being involved in the members' lives, like simple things like sitting with them at lunch helps a lot, getting underway with them, spending time with them in general, having events, having spouse events, and including spouses helps with inclusion a lot. And those are activities that we can do. However, then how you can measure whether or not a command climate is good or bad is through DOME survey, having pay grade meetings, doing peer reviews, asking TDY members for feedback, asking anyone for feedback really. And then whether, knowing whether or not they're coming to you for general things, whether you have an open door policy, and inspection teams, having civil rights come, helping you measure what the command climate is.
Okay, you mentioned a few times tonight about inclusion.
Mm-hmm.
What if I throw out the word morality?
Morality?
Yes.
I've never heard of that word before.
Okay, have you ever heard of anybody saying, like, as you, the OIC, are you the or are you the morality police at your unit? Have you heard anything like that before?
I don't agree with forced morale events, if that's what you mean. So
No. Yeah, I know this would be something different. Yeah, not
Okay.
morale, but yeah, that's. And so one other word, diversity. When you hear that, do you think the Coast Guard has a diverse workforce?
in the concept of diversity where each person has different attributes that make them different, yes. But in the context of race, gender, and protected classes, I think we're heading in the right direction, but we're not 100% on par of being as diverse as the percentages of the country.
All right. Well, thank you very much, BM1. Go ahead and log off, and then we're going to talk, and then I'll bring you back on.
Okay, thank you.
You need to get up to date on some of the new stuff. I got you on a question with the restricted waivers. That's now at the OIC level. All right. When you're getting questions as far as SAR for multi-mission ashore, or just anytime your boat crew's going out and they're giving you the scenario, listen to the information, because you sent a boat 65 miles offshore.
I thought of that after I got off. I was like, crap.
And that's not me trying to trick you, okay? That's what your BM2 or your brand new Coxswain BM3 is going to do is, hey, Chief, we just got a case. It's 60 miles offshore. We're going to launch here in a minute. And they're going to be so excited on the phone. And if you don't catch that, they're going to go. And by the time you talk to sector or get any sort of feedback from the CDO or whatnot, they're going to be, 30 miles offshore. So pay attention, listen to that information. What was the other one? Anytime you make contact with a Coast Guard vessel, that's an elision, and it's an automatic mishap. Automatic mishap. So I'm going to email you my questions with the answers, just so you get your head into some different studying areas. But for the most part, I see a lot of checks and very few X's. Brush up on your PPE. You knew what the flat 60 box was. But when I asked you about PPE for water temperature 61 degrees, no, wait, I apologize. You got that one right. But yeah, you're definitely in all the right stuff. And I'm looking forward to seeing you do good things. So good luck to you.
Thank you, Senior Chief.
Thank you, Senior Wilson Lawler.
Hey, BM1, your nav rules portion was real short, and there was a reason. Because you were slamming them just left and right. So good job on that. You're going to do well with your nav rules. So continue with whatever your process is. You knew them well. Your nav standards, you were really you're abreast on that as well. No issues there. your Mo board. You got that right off the bat. That's a good thing. I think on my part, often us BOSA mates try to figure out engineering. You know, I think you can probably get into the engineering piece a little bit more. Have you reached out to whoever your sitting EO is going to be on your board, your upcoming board?
I was at the college last week and they just announced them today.
Okay.
So starting tomorrow will be like the first, I'm going to be reaching out to him for sure.
Definitely. If there's anybody that you can reach out to them.
Okay.
Engineering is not difficult, but it's kind of unfamiliar with us. So if you'll sit down with them, it'll do you a lot of good. Yep. It's not that you did bad on the questions, but I could sense that there was some uncertainty in your answers. So it's not that you got, in fact, you was about 50-50 on what you were asked. But I think you can turn those good answers into great answers just by reaching out to your EO.
Roger.
I like that you went ahead and took action with the termination of the shrimp boat. Yeah, we're not technically terminating them, but we are pointing them to the shore, right? And we're going to close that gap until we get comms again, and then hopefully you'll get that termination. In terms of the command scenario that I gave you, those are challenging. And you're going to hear these types of scenarios, and they're going to be mentioned all kinds of different ways and in different mannerisms. Just understand that all these scenarios are not just scenarios, they're real.
Right.
They're off of somebody's experience, you know. In this case, that was something that I had to deal with. And the takeaway there is always, even though maybe your member is saying that they're not, that they're okay with what's going on, you know, they probably are not, you know. So you have to kind of have that larger perspective of the whole unit and that member, and maybe in a sense go ahead and protect them by making the decision that you made. Can you prevent people from going to an establishment? Absolutely you can, as the officer in charge. But if you were uncertain about that before you made a decision, call your legal office and they'll get you shored up on that. So all that other stuff is fluff, and there's going to be a lot of fluff out there, you know. But just be careful with getting caught up too much in the whole fluff, you know. Just be cautious with that, because you're going to get 3 or 4 of those types of scenarios, most likely from the CMC or the president of the board. So just be ready for those types of scenarios, because that's where they're going to come from. And then I'll close with, you said you were unsure about your first underway drills. You're a little bit uncertain about that. There's a difference between doing a drill on shore, you know, tied up to the dock, and then actually seeing everybody do it underway.
Yes.
So there's going to be a lot of similarities. The same drills that you run at the dock, pretty much what you're doing is seeing, do they have the gear? Is the gear in good shape? Can they put the gear on? When you're underway and everything's moving around, it's a completely different thing, as you know. So you're going to see a lot of those same types of drills, or you're going to want to see some of the same types of drills, particularly like recovering the small boat and stuff like that. I mean, recovering the small boat at the pier is quite a bit different than recovering the small boat when you're at sea. So, and then the last thing I would say is that there's a lot of he, she pronouns. We all kind of talk that way, and it's not bad to talk that way. The issue is if people start sensing that, they're going to make it an issue. You know, there's going to be a scenario that comes out, something's going to come out of that. So just be cognizant of that. And then there was some times that some of your answers were kind of from an XPO mentality. Remember, when you sit in that chair, you are a sitting officer in charge. Okay. So just consider that when you're thinking about how you're going to answer stuff. So, but hey, your technical knowledge is very, very sound. So I commend you for that.
Thank you, Bosun.
Thank you, Bosun. Senior Chief Hines?
BM1, I'll echo, you know, commend you for getting to this point kind of early in your career and putting forth the effort that you did. Your knowledge is very, very sound. For my questions, I get that Aton's not going to be your primary bread and butter. but you still need to be ready. Whoever's sitting on your board representing the ATON side, they're going to be passionate about it. They are going to have an expectation that you know what IALA stands for, and have a clear definition for how you can identify the differerences. ICW, just because you've never served on the ICW as a chief OIC, you could, at a multi-mission, you could easily end up Station Hoboken right in the middle of the ICW. And so you need to be well aware of where that runs and what those things are like. When I gave you the scenario about the cook giving food, I kind of wanted to hear you say that you would find out what was going on first.
Yeah.
Because remember, as an officer in charge, yes, you are the one that has to hold people accountable for things. However, our mentality should be that why are our people struggling? What is the concerns about my people? How do I help our people? Rather than, oh, that's wrong and I'm going to punish them.
Mhm.
So you're never going to be wrong if you'd say, I'd pull, the CS aside, I'd pull the member aside, I'd get to the root of what's going on.
Mhm.
Okay. And then you make a determination based on that, whether or not this is something that I need to penalize them on and punish them, or if this is something like a work-life kind of related scenario where I need to really kind of get involved to see that my people are getting the care that they need. So don't forget that, because there was a couple times in some of your scenarios, some of the other members asked, it seemed like you were real quick to, oh yeah, I would hammer them this way, or I would deal with it this way, but you're not really getting to the root of the issue. And think of your people first.
Okay.
And then I appreciate the spot promotion, and I realize that in this setting it's hard to keep up, but
Yeah.
I am senior chief, not bosun. So don't get tripped up on that. Like I said, in uniform, you're probably not going to have that problem.
Yeah.
Bosun Lawler pointed out that you did mention, you kind of took on the XPO role a few times.
Mhm.
So your comments were the OIC would do this, or when I'm an OIC.
Okay.
So it is, the board will pick up on that. You need to have the confidence that you are sitting in that chair for a reason.
Mhm.
And one thing I tell people, be proud of the fact that you're sitting here. Like Senior Chief Connor said, you've got a waiver to even get to this point. Be proud of that. Let that be part of your confidence. Get in there. The one thing I will caution you on, and I've seen it in the boards before, and especially people with waivers. I've seen a lot of questions that you answered kind of like, I am this and I would do that and whatever. The times that in my experience as an officer in charge, when you say I or me, it should be, I'm responsible for that. The issue is on me, or it's on me to make this right.
Okay.
Most of your answers should be us, we, them. How do you include everyone else in your thing? Because remember, when it's all said and done, you're not going to be the officer in charge of you. You're the officer in charge of your team.
Mhm.
And it's through your team, just like I tell people for years and years and years. Coxswain, command, whatever, is only as good as the crew that supports them. And if you're not supporting your crew, they're not going to get you. They're not going to have your back.
Mhm.
So be careful. And I won't step on Senior Chief Reisner or Bosun Hopperdeitzel. I won't take away from some of their things here, because a couple of your answers, and if I was sitting on your board and you were to come in and give that explanation for why you deserved a waiver, I would be finished with your board at that point, because it was a lot of me.
That's
I've
good
done
feedback.
this.
Thank you.
I've earned this, and it's just an experience piece.
Yeah.
As you get more mature in the Coast Guard, you'll kind of see the bigger picture.
Mhm.
So that's what I would tell you to do now as you're finalizing your preps. Your knowledge is great, but look at the big picture. See the we, us, them, and kind of steer away from the I and me.
Mhm. Thank you.
But that'd be it. But great job. And contact me, look me up in Global, give me a call, send me an email, whatever and all like that, and I will gladly help you in any way I can.
Thank you, Senior Chief.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Senior Chief Hines. Senior Chief Reisner.
Hey, Votes. Hey, first off, I want to commend you on your NAV rules. I got to say, it kind of blew me away. you'd be kind of shocked at how many boatsmains come to these things and they're stuttering on their nav rules. And that was impressive. I gotta say that was awesome to see. You knew those down. Couple things that work on is your mannerisms. I think this is a different scenario, a different setting, so it's kind of tough. But you got a lot of ums and uhs and pauses, and it was very clear when you knew something where you had no idea, and it's like, okay, what's you gonna say now, right? So kind of work on those mannerisms a little bit, and we can practice that stuff. It's not hard. You'll get it. I would never say assume on your board. I would assume this, like, might not want to assume too much stuff as OIC, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'll kind of echo what a lot of the board members have said is, I call it the brain trust, right? I stole that from another Master Chief. But bring in your brain trust. I never heard one time you're going to talk to your command cadre on your entire board, right? And the XPO, and especially the EPO at a different perspective and a different rate, can really save your behind on some things, right? The EPO, my last unit, we talk about things all the time, and especially him being the command chief. It was great to have that outside search on things. It was a great tool. So make sure you're using the brain trust, as I say. Be careful how you repeat the questions. We have pretty much a limited time tonight, but on your board, I would have cut you short on a couple of your answers. So it's kind of make sure you get those out a little bit, and you'll be okay. But like Senior Chief said, you're a fantastic BM1. And I bet you're one hell of an XPO. But there's a progression in every boatsman's career where you're no longer the coxswain.
Mm-hmm.
You're no longer the XPO. How do you get over that hurdle to thinking about the big picture? And a lot of that comes into knowing big Coast Guard, right? Like, what are the special emphasis programs? What are the work life programs? How am I going to handle the situation? And it's almost like a human resource person, really, because you're looking at doing programs you can put in. How am I going to affect this change? How am I going to do this climate? And one of the big things about being relevant as an OIC is when we say, okay, you have a problem about women's afloat billets. I also agree with that. I think we should have more billets out there. How are you going to fix that? That definitely would have been a follow-up on your scenario.
Okay.
Be ready for that, because if you're an OIC and the commander comes down and says, well, what's your thoughts on how to fix that? And you have nothing, you're no longer relevant.
Mm-hmm.
Does that kind of make sense?
Yes.
Right. So, and that's the switch. So going from the XPO job to OIC job. The XPO runs the unit, right? I'm probably gonna let the XPO run the unit pretty good day to day out. I gotta think about that big picture stuff, stay out of his or her way, and let them do that, and I focus on the big picture. All right. But I gotta tell you, all those things, easy fixes. Easy fixes. It's just a different way of thinking, and I would have a strategy on your scenarios.
Mm-hmm.
You probably heard mine: triage, resources, notifications, command climate. Any scenario, I go down those steps, and I can pretty much get everything knocked out within that strategy.
Okay.
So any scenario, I go down that as a little checklist, and I can talk about it and get pretty dang close and reaching out, notifications, talking legal, work life, yada, yada, and figure it out. But we could definitely talk more. You're right there. Your board's right on the corner. So if you want to reach out, do it quickly. I'll be more willing to help, just as anyone else here would be. And again, thank you for studying. You're definitely in the books, and it shows. And it's people like you that I have no problem helping who show the willingness to do it.
Thank
So
you.
thanks.
Thank you, Senior.
All right, thank you, Senior. So just to finish up your BM1, you got no one's after you, so we kind of pushed the board a little longer. You've actually been here for almost 2 hours. And I've been telling the other individuals, when we're done here, I'm going to load this into Dropbox for you. And I was kind of watching these and talking to the other board candidates. Watch the debrief that we just did now, and then listen to everything that the board members have told you, and then go back and then re-watch everything that you've done. And
Yes.
you're going to clue in on a lot of things that we talked about, which is very big. So I mean, keep on studying. The one other thing that, and the only reason I know is the first question I asked you, I said, just tell us a little bit about yourself. The board already has everything in front of you about the Coast Guard. We kind of like to know a little bit more about who you are, what type of individual you are. I just happen to know, because we're on here, that you have a dog running around in the background, and then he barked at you. So little things, you can just kind of find something just to give the board members an idea of who BM1 is. We know who you are on paper, but kind of give us an idea what you'd like to do, certain things like that. Just kind of like, yep, this is me, and this is why I'm here. All right? Other than that, if you have any questions for us, please let us know. Like everyone said, reach out to any of us. We're here, and please make sure you reach out to all of your board members because your board's coming up soon, all right?
Thank you so much. I just want to say thank you for all the feedback, and that as you guys were giving me the feedback, I was like, oh yeah, I never talked about XPO or EPO in any of the decisions. So for the board, and a lot of that comes from is that I'm trying to like quickly get an answer out, which I know isn't the right, it's not the right thing to do, obviously, right? So is there anything against like taking a second and writing things down and then saying it, like what Senior Chief was saying with triage, or is that taking up too much time and they're going to get annoyed?
No, take a break. They're going to ask you a question. Take the question in, think about it for a second. You may think you're taking a long time. Don't sit there for, like 7, 8, 10 seconds, but think about the question, think about your answer, and wait. Anyone else?
Yeah, you don't really think too much about writing down the questions. I usually think of doing an interview. If you ever do any public affairs or public speaking type of things, one of the things they say is take in the question, formalize it for a second, is usually, like Bosa said, for me, it's a deep breath. Takes me about 2 to 3 seconds to take a deep breath. And I do that. That gives me a second to clear my mind, to think about a clear and concise answer, and then give your clear and concise answer. I've heard it said pregnant pauses before. Kind of watch those, because the longer it takes, the more time you're eating up in the board. You're going to lose questions, and we got checks we got to get through. We got to get through all those questions. If you end up missing out on questions, that's going to affect your performance on the board.
Okay.
The board will move you along. If you're taking too much time, they're going to move you along. They're going to start cutting off your answers and move into the next one. So if you don't worry about if you think you're taking too much time, the board will make you adjust. Okay. In terms of asking questions, one thing I like to tell people is listen to the question, figure out what policy is associated with that question, and then apply that policy to whatever your answer is going to be.
Okay.
Now, that sounds like kind of a lot, long drawn out thing, but you can do that fairly quickly, especially if you know a lot of the policies, similar to what Senior Chief Reiser was mentioning earlier. So maybe try to go through that process as you're answering questions in your head while you're continuing with your preparations.
Okay.
Yeah, for scenarios, Bosun hit it, the fluff. You got to find your way through that fluff. And the way I would write down scenarios is those key terms you're looking for. And you can find it. I think I sent you all those work life questions I got. You can look through those questions and say, okay, BM3, 18 years old, DUI. That's it. I got the whole scenario figured out. Right. So if you could pick out those key words on how and get through the fluff, find the problem, find the policy, like Bosun said, you're there. And so those are the only notes I took down. And then I actually wanted to mention to you too, the math problems you did. You had a 3 and 6 minute rule, practically the 12 minutes they said. You're the first person that got all the math questions right on board I've done in a long time. So kudos to you for that. So when I got in there, first thing I did was I wrote down my command philosophy, and I wrote down that strategy I told you about. And those are only 2 things I wrote down. So I knew I had to keep my command philosophy, and I knew I had to go through that little checklist in my mind to make sure that I was thinking on a command level and I was thinking through the problem. I'll just start spitting stuff out. And I'm a talker. I'll just start talking. And that could get me in trouble too. So that was a way to keep me from just keep going and just barf from the mouth with words, and it's just a wreck from there. Right. So it's kind of a check on myself. But I think you'll be fine taking notes. You are going to be your biggest hurdle when it comes to that kind of stuff. And try not to get in your own way. I guess what I would say with that, with taking notes.
Mm-hmm.
You have any more questions? Those are really good questions. You got anything else?
No, that's really good feedback. A lot of it is that I need a lot of practice with what you guys are saying, is to practice my answers basically. Like, I need to keep doing my knowledge, but I'm kind of at the point where I need to focus on scenarios. And just,
Yeah. And then for that, why you deserve a waiver question,
yeah.
who approved your waiver?
Commander Swintek,
Okay. Was there somebody who gave the commander a recommendation?
my OIC.
Okay. Ask your OIC. Why did you approve this waiver?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because getting that feedback, what your OIC sees in you,
Mm-hmm.
which we all probably give a pretty good shot about just talking to you this last couple hours, your drive, your motivation, and your work ethic,
Mm-hmm.
that would help you understand, how am I going to answer that question?
Okay.
And does it match what I see in myself? Right? Because those are usually two different things, how I see myself and how other people see me. And that'll give you a total 360 on what that answer should be.
Okay. That's good feedback. Thank you.
And BM1, remember, when you go and sit, not everyone passes the first time, not everyone passes the second or the third. I've known guys that have done 6 or 7. I don't know how they've done it, but they've done it. People get through it. I would love, I don't know the exact pass rate for the first time, but I do know it's low. But that isn't to be like, oh, do I want to sit on every mock board you can. If you can do it, do it. When you come out of there, you're going to come out of there with a better perspective of the board. And each time you go in there, you're going to be even better off for it. So when I went through and get picked up, it actually ticked me off, where I studied even more, went back and really challenged them even harder. So don't let it discourage you. It happens, and just keep on plugging away. All right.
Thank you, Bosun. Thank you, everyone. That this has been more, like, even crazy more beneficial than I thought it could be. Just like you guys turning up the heat with all the questions. Like, I've needed that, like the quick pace, and then just being able to think about everything. I really appreciate it.
Just imparting, remember, as an officer in charge, we operate in the gray a lot. You know, you're ready for black and white answers, but a lot of things are going to be gray. So as you're finalizing your preparations and you're thinking on some of these scenarios that were thrown out, think of the gray area, because as much as I'd like to say everything's cut and dry, very little is ever cut and dry.
Mm-hmm.
Be ready for those. You're going to do great. And like Bosun said, if you don't make it for whatever reason, don't put it on the shelf. Get right back into books, get right back into your network, contact us, let us know how you're doing and what areas to work on, and keep that fire fresh, because the worst thing you can do is get frustrated, disgruntled, and throw it on the shelf. That will make your preparations for the next one even more difficult.
Thank you.
Please reach out. Please reach out.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, BM1. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much.
All right, y'all.
All
have
right.
a
Have a good night, boss. Have a good night, everyone.
Yeah,